This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 73. Notecard Nerd-Along, Part 1. Hello and welcome to... what episode are we on? Is it
73.
73. Thank you. So what we're doing, it's a new thing we're doing. We're starting a new series as part of our Zettelcast. And the series is called Notecard Nerd-Along.
Oh,
Because
I love it.
Victoria has reminded us many times that we're note card nerds. And we have over in LiLLiPub, because of Victoria, started on something that's gonna absolutely be pertinent to everything that we do and things that the people over in LiLLiPub are doing, and that is research-driven writing. And it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. It's kind of the deep core of a healthy Zettelkasten. An unhealthy Zettelkasten is kind of like your trash bin. The place where you put stuff that you never look at again. But the healthy Zettelkasten is one that helps you produce. And it's such a virtuous cycle. Because the more you produce, the more curious you are. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I'm so happy that Victoria, with her inaugural issue of her newsletter, and we're going to let her take over from me in just moments, is going to be covering research-driven writing. There's a scant little thing in her lovely book. It's a teaser. You can find some stuff on research. There's a lovely little worksheet that's very targeted to a particular kind of research you might do, but she wisely has recognized that this is a great topic for not only issue number 1, but probably a series of issues. And we're going to be following along on LiLLiPub. And here we're going to share what we're doing and the context of it. So, Victoria, what do we mean by research-driven writing?
Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. It means using primary and secondary resources of information in order to inform the thing that you're working on. Now, obviously, I mean that mostly in the context of fiction. Many people don't think of fiction as a place where you do research other than, maybe you look up your main character's an engineer, and maybe you look up a few key terms or something that might help you get the lingo of things he might say, whatever. But you can really go as deep as you want to go, particularly as someone who is interested in finding new information, someone who has a natural curiosity that you want to buoy with more information, or someone who has what Scott Shepherd likes to call zones of fascination. Things that just light you up, things that make you want to get to the books and get to the writing. For me, that's the primary purpose for research-driven writing, because too often, as we all know, writing is lonely and it's hard and it's boring and it's frustrating. It's the most wonderful thing you'll ever do, but there are aspects of it that sometimes make it feel, quite honestly, like drudgery. And you just need something to get yourself over that hump so you can find that spark again. For me, once I found the Zettelkasten, I never had to worry about not having spark. If I sit down and I'm not feeling something, I can pull up a book or a website or some other source that allows me to slip into the story, the character, the world, or some kind of a detail that gets those creative juices going. So then I can drop right into a zero draft and at least get some information down that helps me move the writing forward.
Fantastic. So we're going to have two activities in this episode, and I'm going to tell you about both of them because the first activity is kind of the 10,000-foot view that we're all involved in with whatever research-driven writing we're doing. And then activity 2 is, how is our Zettelkasten going to be participating in this? So activity 1 is, tell us what you're digging into now or what's up next for you, what it's for, using your discretion with spoilers, and where you are on it, big picture wise. Are you already dug in? Are you still circling? And what's your overall timeline for this research? When are you hoping that you're going to get it to a certain level of completion? And how major a role does this play? So I'm hoping that this can be really quick. It's the what and the why and a little bit of the when. And then, so we'll share all of those. And I said bonus points for this activity if you're able to use the horribly named technique that I talked about in episode 34, which is called Weighted Shortest Job First, WSJF. If you use that as kind of your mechanism for how you're valuing it and figuring out how you're going to tackle it, bonus points for you. Now, who's keeping score? Not me, but all right. Now, activity 2. So this is where we're going to put Zettelkasten meat onto the bones. So how are your plus ones gearing up, or how have they done so already? What is your process of repair when you initiate a new project that is the size of this research that you have talked about? And how does your Zettelkasten expect to change and grow from this research and the writing that you produce from it? How does it expect to change and grow? Not how do you expect it to change and grow, because it's your plus one. All right. So, Victoria, how about you go first? Uh-oh.
Oh God, I feel like I'm naked without my homework.
Well, you got a newsletter you're in the middle of.
I know. I know, but I have to be careful. I don't want to tell you everything.
Yeah.
So I hope this answers the question. I think for me, I like to begin with something small. So like maybe my first note card, let's say regarding a particular character that's just kind of fuzzy and undeveloped, might simply be it's a woman in her 40s, and that's literally all that I know. I'm gonna turn, if I just have no idea about how to start filling in those details, I'm gonna turn, like I said, to those things that are either inspiring or interesting or fascinating, or that maybe somehow will contribute or complement the story that I'm putting her in. So just to pull something out of a hat, let's say that it's speculative fiction, revolves around magical realism. Well, then I have to decide, okay, if she has power, where does it come from? Or what does it look like? Or how does she discover it? I'm just going to start asking myself those little questions that's going to force me to start plugging in my details. Because something that's really cool, once you start Zettelkasting your ideas, every choice that you make moves that character or that scene or whatever you're looking at in one direction, and it eliminates the other choices. So it's like every choice action has a reaction, and that's pushing things in a direction. So what I have found, which is a super useful exercise, is go down that road a little ways and then go back to the beginning and make a different choice, because that's going to force that character down a different road. Maybe I choose her to have black hair and be very tall. And then that leads to decisions about how she dresses and maybe a little bit of her backstory. Well, then what if I go back and I make her have blonde hair and be kind of short and stocky and tough? Well, that already feels different in my head. She feels like a totally different avenue. So I'm going to follow her down that avenue. And at some point in those two directions, I'm going to land on something that feels to me like it embodies this character. And that's one really good way to let your research guide you. Let's say, for example, I decide that her magical power is that she can hear other people's thoughts. Well, I'm Googling telekinesis. And next thing I know, that's taken me down another hole. And next thing I know, it's, okay, well then if she has this kind, it eliminates that. So the next thing is going to have to look like this. And then you literally start to Lego in pieces of this character. And as long as you're following that progression in your note cards, not only are you developing this character out, but the avenue that you zeroed out and decided, nope, that's not her, that becomes fodder for other characters. So the system naturally builds on itself regardless. Does that help?
Oof. Yes. So this first thing that you're doing, whatever it may be, maybe it's just what you've outlined here. What kind of timeline are you looking for that you're going to want to have like created a proposed solution for yourself?
If I, in the instance of developing a character, I try to do that fairly quickly, like inside of a week, because this is the dark side of research-driven writing. You can stay there forever. I mean, as big as the internet is, as many books as you have on your shelf to go through, you can literally stall out in research mode. So I try to guard against that by giving myself pretty strict timelines. If I've spent more than a week or so just on the meat of a character, I dive out of research. I go right into zero drafting and I force myself to go into scene drafting. So my zero draft might just have those details about her, a little bit about her backstory, and then I'm immediately going to transition that into some kind of a scene, put her in with another character and make them interact, because again, it's forcing me to make choices and move the story along. I discovered about myself very early on when I started writing my first novel, I can spend forever in research, and that is death to the writing. So instead, I keep, and I don't have one at hand, but one of my little mobile decks, it's got probably 50 small cards on it, not large ones because I don't want to go too far in. But if I'm drafting along and all of a sudden I think, ooh, I wonder if her telekinesis allows her to do this, I'm going to jot that on a research card and set it aside. And I'm going to keep writing. So I'm not going to let those ooh questions or those curiosities derail me from actually doing the writing. I'm going to jot them on a research or a cheat card. And then later, when I'm ready to define a block of time, like maybe I'm going to set a 30-minute Pomodoro, I'm going to allow myself to go noodle around with these questions. Then I do it during that dedicated block of time. Kind of like what you were talking about with putting things in a think block. I think that's what you called it. But only allowing myself enough time to answer those questions, but to not go off on another 4.5-hour tangent, because, the library is my happy place and I could spend my whole life there just looking stuff up. And then the closing the loop is file those cards. File those cards. You got to follow the whole nerd loop, and that is you got to file them so you can find them later.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay. So still on activity 1, going to who wants to go next and tell us about what you're into and what it's for and where you are on it.
Okay, I'll go next.
Okay.
I am, I'm enamored, of course, with this Victoria's wonderful book. If you don't
Isn't it
have
gorgeous and heavy?
Yep. And other than that, I snuck and read the acknowledgments. I'm reading it page by page and not allowing myself to turn a page until I've done what that page told me to do. So I got to page 26 where it says I'm supposed to generate a list based on your areas of interest and or things you know you will be considering as parts of your story, and then use that list to create categories, either based on the academic disciplines as listed in Wikipedia or on your own idea of structure. So, and then of course, so that's where I am. And it was perfect, just perfectly dovetailed to this question because I took my notebook, which I created straight from Victoria's 60 for Success and a Novelist Planner. So it's part of my planning. So I created a list of, first of all the things for my own area of interest, which is writing with emotion, so that my topics can get category numbers that interface with Victoria's in that system. And then for my stalled out novel was Jonathan and the Dinosaur Notebox. And I went through, I've got another full page, but this page I'm going to have to consult with Victoria because I'm not sure if it fits in categories. That's another matter. So I identified all my categories, and then, like a good note card nerd, I've started a separate section in my Zettelkasten for Victoria's stuff, and and I've made out all of the cards for each of the categories that I found on Wikipedia to go with all my sections that I'm interested in. And now I'm this far into indexing them all because that's part of creating a note card. You create it and then you index it. And so I have my index section as Victoria uses a sheet style. So that's not going to get confused with my new section of my Zettelkasten. And I'm in the process of creating entries for all of my starter cards. Now, what I've got here in terms of timeline is my writing with emotion stuff has a strict, it's got a 7-month timeline because it's for my round 2 of my newsletters. But the Jonathan and the Dinosaur Notebox is my background project. So it doesn't have a deadline, but it's got something that's very related to time. And that's that second page that I don't know yet how I'm going to go about numbering it or giving it sections, but there are all kinds of little things that become identified that I need to know about my characters. I need to know a lot about their geography. I need to know about their towns. There's 3 different well, there's several geographic locations involved. And I need to know about all of these different geographical locations, how that fits with the time. But what I'm realizing from just this page, and I'm not kidding you, I'm literally only on page 26. And already my work is exploding for me. It's opening up because now I can see, for example, that I'm going to need to know each of my characters' town, their house. 2 of them are university professors. They're at different universities. I need to know about assign a university, which will tell me what town they live in. Some characters live on a farm, and some characters are going off on a quilting road trip. And so, but what this tells me is that I have them now. And as soon as I give them numbers, I will have places to put things. And that means that if I have a little sliver of time, which my Reawaken the Dream of Writing is all about how do you use slivers of time, I can work on quilt shops along the way of their trip. I can work on what hotel is Edwina staying in Italy. There are so many things that I've now, even just now, identified that will give me something. If I've only got 15 minutes of time, I can make good use of that 15 minutes of time to move my novel along. So that's where time fits in for me.
So you've built all this, you're building all these bones because you know from your own experience with the Zettelkasten that you need those in order to get started with any of this?
I need them to, like, so right now, say I had 15 minutes. I've got this list, and that's a fabulous starting point because I can say, oh, 15 minutes, I can check a quilt shop at one of the places they've stopped for the night. I can get Google that town. I can look up quilt shops. I can get a picture of the quilt shop, and I have a list of things I can do. Before I filled out this piece of paper, it was somewhere in the back of my mind. If I had 15 minutes of time, it would be, well, what? Am I going to talk about Italy? Am I going to talk about the farm? Am I going to talk about what? I've got something, I just grab one. And because it's going to have a number, I've got to figure out how to number these guys. I'll have a place, when I do my lookup, I'll have a place to put it.
That's fantastic. That in a nutshell is the value of sketching out your list, because that's exactly how it worked for me when I started using the anti-net Zettelkasten to start working on my novel. I had exactly the same moment, which was, holy cow, I don't have to hold it all in my head. As long as it's on a card and that card has a number and it's keyworded. So when I go to look for quilt shops, I go to Q, I see quilt shops and I know where that lives. I am immediately dropped into my task, and I don't have to noodle around in my head to think, where am I in this story? What's the last thing I wrote? None of that matters. Once you've captured it in the cards, it's all there for safekeeping, and you can grab any little piece and work with it.
Super. Okay.
Kathleen gets a gold star.
Yeah, I think that those of us who have gotten to know Kathleen well know why she was such a good student, because she actually does the work. You are so diligent. You're just like,
Yeah.
by reflex, you seem to be so diligent. I really admire it. I think about that quality in you very often. It's quite inspiring. And you don't necessarily even know that it's a big deal. But it's a big deal among all the people who are constantly, gonna do. Do.
Yeah.
So yay. All right, who wants to follow that?
I can follow that only because mine is going to be kind of like the antithesis.
Cool.
But research driven writing is about all I do, because I'll come up with something will pop in my head, and it has no place to be, and I don't know, that much about it. And so I say, well, what does that mean? My questions. What might this look like? What might this intersection of these things look like? That's because one thing pops in, and an associative thing pops up with it. And so I've got this mashup happening. And then I ask myself, all right, that's what it looks like. And I'm talking to my AI, we having this conversation. And I say, oh, that's what it looked like. Well, how did you do that? How did you do that? I want a 1, 2, 3 granular agenda telling me every nook and cranny of what you did and how you came up with this. Because I don't want you to, your job is not to write my stories. Your job is to stimulate my head. That's what you're supposed to do. And I ask for memory anchoring exercises along with this, because it comes up with all these terms that I'm not familiar with. And there has to be a way to anchor those terms in my mind. So, and then I print the whole thing out and go over it. Now, I don't have any, I cannot tell you about time. You know, I cannot, I mean, I don't even know when these stimulations are going to come up. You know, they pop up and they say, "Hey, how you doing? What you doing?" And I'm supposed to respond. And I say, "Okay, I'm here. Let's play. Let's do it." Um, you see, that's a far cry from the orderly presentation that we just witnessed. This is on the other side. Um, but my thought is, I'm gonna keep going with this process. Keep going with this process because the order page on your book order page, Victoria, had this one section that had the word imagination, and the end was on the next line. So you have imaginatio, and then the end on the next line. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at that. So what? I know this is not a typo. There's a reason for this. What could it be? And I decided that again, me and my AI decided that the end was the structure, represented the structure. Okay, imagination is all over the place, and it remains all over the place unless you have structure. Whether you come in the front door, the back door, the side door, however you get there, the idea is without the structure, you just fly around and you never land. So I'm going to thank you again for this book. And that's all I have to say about any of that.
Okay, yeah, cool. You're doing you is what you're doing. Yep. All right, Mel.
All
what
right.
Can you share?
Well, I've been doing research-driven writing for basically ever since I launched my newsletter a year and a half or almost 2 years ago. And so it's something that I have been doing and that I'm continually learning from. And recently, I've really been refining my understanding of what it is I'm researching. I've been sort of picking around at the edges of a lot of different things, and I'm seeing how they are connected and actually all part of one big thing. And so the one big thing, you could call it the Western intellectual tradition. And I'm specifically focusing my research on the medieval era, which is a huge, huge length of time from, late antiquity up to the Renaissance. This is hundreds of years. So lumping it all together as, the Middle Ages is really rather dismissive. And I'm focusing on that time period and the techniques that were developed in that time period, partly because they have been neglected, at least in popular thought. There's always been academics that are interested in the time, but we have a good reasonable popular understanding of what Greek thought was and Roman and the Renaissance, but the Middle Ages is just like this black box. Nothing much happened. There were some knights and there was some jousting and the Crusades. That's about it. And
the word medieval is often used in our culture as derogatory.
Yes. And that, I think that largely came from the thinkers in the pre-modern, early modern time period, who, like, for example, the trivium was the basis, the three basic things that people had to learn is grammar and well, I'm blanking on the other two, but there are three
Logic and
basic.
rhetoric?
I think so. Yes, and then the quadrivium, you get into mathematics and astronomy and music, and a fourth one. So yeah, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and that was the basis of the educational system. Well, in the hands of these early modern writers, trivium got turned into trivial, meaningless.
Trivia. Mhm.
Yeah, but our Zettelkasten is something that grew out of the ways of manipulating and remembering and ordering data that were developed in the Middle Ages. And that's something that I've been learning more and more about. And so that's been my focus. My timeline is I've got multiple timelines. I've got a monthly, more or less, timeline of newsletters in which I write about some of the things. And I'm also working towards developing a course, which is sort of like the nonfiction end of what Victoria is talking about in terms of how do you do research and how do you make it fun and how do you make it a cohesive, coherent process rather than just sort of flailing around on Wikipedia. So that's in process. I've got it outlined. I've got some of it written. It's got a long ways to go. Hopefully in the next 6 months, maybe. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That is awesome news.
Mhm. Yeah.
And one thing I would add is that one of the values with three of the people here, Kathleen, Mel, and Victoria, is because you're doing newsletters, you have an interesting experience to share of basically how do you serialize your research so you don't have to become the world's foremost expert before you write issue 1. Where, how does it kind of how does it move along in a coherent way, even when you don't know exactly where you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue. It's you kind of I feel like I'm dragged along by the schedule of the newsletters and I'm running to catch up. And usually once I submit something, then like the next day or two, I'm like, oh, I could have written about this. I could have added this. You got to cut it off somewhere and make a note of it and it'll go in somewhere some other time.
Yeah, that sounds like one of Victoria's ooh. Only it's a little like ooh.
Yeah.
So
It's true. But I think you can circle back, don't you, Mel? Don't you kind of call back to previous issues or circle back to certain topics that you want to come at from a different way?
Absolutely. And in fact, I just did that because in my book, I write a little bit about discursive meditation, but I focus on the how and the output. But over the course of the couple of years since I wrote that book, in all of my research, I keep finding more and more about the history and the historical practice of discursive meditation. And I've revisited a couple of times in my newsletters under different facets, different things to share. And in the one that I just sent to the printer, I've shared a lot of what I've learned about the history and an additional facet, additional practice that people can do to make even more use of it. So yes, definitely. I think that the newsletter format is actually a really good way of revisiting things as you learn more. Because even people who were there for the earlier ones, you're adding more value to it for them.
Lovely. Lovely. Well, so my story is kind of like Kathleen's, only not so diligently done. So it has to do with Roanoke. I have a lot of I began Roanoke with a very sizable reading list of inspirational sources. And some of those I have started to play out in the story, and the timeless way of building is one of those. Memory is another one of those memory techniques. But the list of sources was just the unifying thread of those sources and why I thought they might go together, even if my thought about it was very tenuous, was only in my head. I didn't say, I want to read this book because I think that it's going to create this outcome in the story world, because I really didn't know that yet. But I know enough now about where I feel holes. And so I'll just talk about some of the categories. And so game design itself, game design itself, right? So we think of games as amusements, but in the Roanoke world, the world was designed by game designers to a certain extent. What's that like? And how is the experience of games on Earth informing that? Well, not being a massive game player myself, I'm at a disadvantage. Whatever. So there's a bunch of stuff that I already knew that I wanted to read, and now I have a little bit more of a sense of urgency around making for my game playing readers, whoever they may be, enough of a feeling of authenticity that they would recognize, oh, this is a world where you're playing games as part of your life. Right? So that's a huge thing. There's architecture in general, the timeless way of building. I've only scratched the surface on that, but I feel like it's deeply integrated into the world of Lydia. And so we've got Christopher Alexander's books to refer to. And I now have a more targeted reason for them. It's like, how do those map to games? How do those patterns that he talks about in his pattern language, how do they already support in the pattern language gameplay? How does the pattern language need to be extended to further support it? Those are areas for me. Now looking at my own Zettelkasten, I've got 5 major categories of knowledge, the big categories of knowledge, and the category that is natural science is a very, very slender, very, very slender. And I need something around that because for some reason I decided to write in the very opening scene something where somebody in the opening scene says, well, if anybody needs to, go to the potty, we trained a potty over in the Grove. And that only came to me because I was amused by the idea of training a potty instead of potty training the human. And then I doubled down on that where the groom of this couple says, it's really nice. We may not even want a bathroom in our house. And the wife says, yeah, no, it is really nice. But we're going to have a bathroom in our house. But what does it mean to train a potty in this world? And what makes it really nice? Where somebody would really think, do I need to have one in my house? And so there's all the yucky stuff, sanitation and ecology, and that's all all the yucky stuff. And I don't my natural science stuff is really slim. And then we've got social dynamics, where I've already got the stake in the ground where Jenna is going to have to explain to all of Lydia what in the heck was meant by this phrase, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. It makes no sense to anybody on the planet. Well, what would have to happen for that to be true? And what's she going to have to do to authentically explain it so that it doesn't become lost knowledge? It's like there's wisdom in that saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the sort of thing that they are doomed to repeat history if they are unaware of that. So that's another area. So I did this WSJF thing on all of those, and on the value, I have depicting the world in the timeless way as my two of my highest value things, and the other one is the social dynamics aspect. That's the highest value, and the urgency and the risk and the size all ended up where those two things are suggested by this set of formulas. Start there. However, I don't think my inputs are right, because microbiology and ecology went all the way to the bottom, but I'm stuck on this scene, which is early. So I think what's the problem is that it's too big. So this is how it relates to what you were talking about, Kathleen. You have broken down your thing into manageable tasks that could certainly be done in a day, but in some cases it's 15 minutes. And that's what I haven't done. It's just like, understand microbiology.
A little too large.
15 minutes.
So that I feel like what this exercise has shown me is that that's my next thing that I need to do, is to play fair, to make it so that the size of each of these things is roughly the same.
Oh.
So then it's much more about the value and the urgency.
Yeah.
That works, but then I haven't used that system, but I've fallen in love with autofocus since you folks introduced it to me.
It's great.
I really love that. And autofocus has this important wrinkle that if something has to be done with priority, then you can go straight to that. You don't have to start on your first page. And so to me, that takes care of the urgency thing. And if you urgently needed, you don't need microbiology to figure out how to do an outdoor privy. I mean, it was done for how many centuries?
But how do I make it nice?
Yeah.
That is the wrinkle. Because I don't think anybody said, this is so nice, we don't even want indoor plumbing.
Right.
Nope.
So yeah, there are ways that work on Earth.
Mhm.
And I think part of the speculative fiction fun is to imagine, what are the constraints that I can just blow holes through?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've touched on something that is included in the newsletter. And it's a really important piece, because this is where using the Zettelkasten helps you get to know yourself better as a writer. Like you said in the beginning, you didn't know what you didn't know, and you didn't necessarily know what you needed to know. Those are things that research can help you with. And ultimately, the place you want to get to, like the goalpost for doing research and using it as a tool, is to figure out, in my book, I talk about the minimum viable unit. That's knowing when I sit down to write, I'm going to write for 20 to 30 minutes. I'm probably going to get around 600 to 700 words average. Once I know that, I know if I need to write 10,000 words, I know how many work blocks I need. Simple. Well, research is the same way. once I know that to write a particular scene or to really have my grips in a character so I can write them effectively, once I know what my minimum research inspiration is, then I know I can do the writing. And that's what we're talking about. It's what's the minimum amount of information? Do I need 1 card? Do I need 3 cards? What needs to be on them? What's the minimum knowledge that will allow me to write that thing authentically and in a way that lights me up and I feel like I'm telling the story? Well, if you know now that you need to know what kind of critters like compost poop, okay, let's work with that. That inspires me. I can work with that.
Yes.
Once you know that one thing, the writing takes care of itself.
Or actually, you have another thing, which is receptacle issues. I hear that in India, sometimes they build the outhouse over a river and it just opens out into the flowing water below. And the idea is it just goes away. Well, we have in Lydia, no one has to dig a receptacle. We have all of these plants and roots and whatnot. The material could be quickly whisked far enough away that there wouldn't be any offensive byproducts.
Yeah, that's the idea. And just to be able to describe that in a way that doesn't sound like BS.
Yeah.
But I do, it is a strong aspect of the world that I want it to be imbued with this sense of wisely managed resources.
Okay. Then think about what is the indoor plumbing going to do? How's that going to function?
Right. What's the difference?
Yeah.
So the other question for activity 2, and we'll start again with you, Victoria, because I know you probably need to hop. At the end of the research that you're doing, how is your Zettelkasten? How is Wilma gonna stand up proud and say, see, now here's how I am. Here's what I can do for you.
Yeah, which she does all the time. She's always mooing or braying or something at me. I think Wilma is happy with a regular influx of information. And it's funny because at least I do think about my notebox and my system as an organism separate from myself. And for me, that means it needs regular care and feeding. And we mentioned this in an episode very early on, how if I don't tend it regularly, it doesn't have to be daily, but at least every few days, I'm putting away the cards I was using. Maybe I'm pulling some new ones. Maybe I'm processing some entirely new material, whatever. If I don't do that fairly regularly, she makes me feel bad. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I do. I see her standing over there, like a mule with her chin on the fence looking at me like, hello, I need to eat. I need watering. I need brushing. I mean, I really think about it as a living thing because I use it that way. And it tells me things and it answers questions and it gives me questions. It challenges me when it loses things without me and I have to go find them. So yeah, for me, it brings a different aspect of activity to my writing work, where before I would sit down, I mean, I wrote academic courses and just whatever, technical writing for years. I would sit down with my notebook, maybe some notes on a laptop notepad, whatever. I would sit down and I would literally just take that rock and just hammer it. And don't get me wrong, writing's always fun, but not like this. This has a different relationship to it. And that's what I value so much. Because before it was just me and I sat down alone with my notebook and 48, printed out PDFs and had to figure out what to do with all this crap. And it felt like a job, like not a fun job. But now, even, working on my newsletter or my book, which are obviously more academic than fiction, but it feels more like play and possibility, and like I'm never alone. It sounds crazy, but that's how I feel. I feel like I can sit here for an entire day with just my notebox and my pile of note cards, and I'm never alone. If I can't figure something out, I can go root around and at least find a thread that I can pull through. Or because it's mine and I've built it, everything in there is inspiring and has utility. So it's not just like Googling something and getting a bunch of stuff and then being like, okay, what parts of this have relevance or what lights me up? Everything is in there because I put it in there because it's something that I love. So it brings a relationship and a workflow to the things about writing that can be drudgery that's just not there anymore. Is it still hard? Yes. Do I still cry on my keyboard? Absolutely. But I never feel alone. It's like, Wilma, okay, we got this. Let's figure it out. So it's having that relationship.
Super. So it sounds like, I mean, you already have a good relationship and you're just expecting it to deepen, but do you have any particular ways in which you anticipate that it will?
I think what I hope I see happening is opening up new avenues of thought. Because now, as a result of like this group and some of the other conversations that we have, outside of the Zettelcast, I find myself either interested in or wanting to explore things that I really wouldn't have before. And that's part of, you've got the notebox aspect, but you also have the community aspect. And when combined, you really do have a superpower because you're always being challenged, you're always being questioned, somebody's always discovering something new. Mel was so generous to send me a sample of his newsletter as I was trying to figure out how to do mine. And there were at least 8 things in there. And I was like, ooh, I need a card for that. Oh, I need a card for that. There are things I would never have found on my own. But it's like, ooh, there's a little fascination there. There's a little curiosity. So that's what I hope is, and I know will happen. I will continue to find new threads and tuck them in there until such a time that it's usually unexpected. I'm looking for something or I'm doing something and Wilma produces that card. Maybe I flip to it or, the V reveals it. And then I look at the things around the things I'm looking at and then you're like off to the races. So yeah, I think continuing to expand down roads that I would not normally go is a gift of the notebox itself because you run across those things and then you're off.
Super. All right, Kathleen.
Okay, what I am learning, and Zeke is expanding me, and Victoria is expanding me. Of course, I'm writing a book on the Zettelkasten, and the title of the book, just show it to you. I've got 13 chapters of 15 written. The title of the book is Unlocking the Treasure, a Zettelkasten Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. And because it's beyond the wildest dreams of my reader and not mine and not my prejudices, it opened me up to many different ways that people can use a Zettelkasten. And I've had the thrill and the privilege of hanging around Scott Shepard's group, and whenever people ask questions and they say they're stuck because they've got an unusual problem with their Zettelkasten, something they're trying to do that doesn't seem to fit in, I invite them to jump on a Zoom call to work through their problem. And as a result, I've had the thrill of working with a neurosurgeon managing scientific articles in the field where he's also a professor. I've worked with someone who is writing a history of their sorority, one of the earliest, if not the earliest sorority ever founded in America. And she's dealing with all kinds of amazing primary sources like old, brittle newspaper accounts of events and people's handwritten notes from the planning and things. So she's got all of this incredible material. Um, just I could go on endlessly with the amazing things. Sometimes two different people have inherited a vast treasure from a famous parent
Mm.
and all of their writing and all of their notes and wanting to know, well, how am I going to honor this material? I can't let it just sit in a basement or an attic. So it already opened me up to the idea that people need different things out of their Zettelkasten and they need it for different reasons. But in all of those, the fiction writing was not something that I ever tackled well, I can't say that. I did a 35-week course called Reawaken the Dream of Writing, and I took 3 weeks to say, I kind of know that a Zettelkasten ought to work for this, and here's some ideas. And I was very clear in my opening sequence of emails that we're trying this together. I'm not coming to you with experience. Well, now I'm thrilled to be able to come back to that and say, well, get Victoria's book because she's really taken it to the limit. But in particular, what I'm really getting an appreciation just so early in the game doing it is I'm understanding the value of a note card of information. And
Oh,
I have done Zoom podcast after Zoom podcast saying, you don't want those stupid information cards. You want ideas. And here's how we work with ideas. And I still love them. Zeke is so full with ideas that I literally had to get out a plastic shoebox to hold the index. And now I've got another one that I'm going to use for my fiction writing. So he's chock full of ideas, and I'm never going to stop loving them, but I'm understanding the place for information.
mm.
And with fiction writing, there are so many things that you need to know to get that spark of realism. One of the things I have one of my main characters, after she's dropped her son off with her parents, she's celebrating still in her hometown before she leaves for Italy, and she goes to a cafe. And I've researched a cafe in that hometown, and I want it not to beat anybody over the head, but I would like for someone who reads that to say, I know that cafe. That's around the corner. And it gives you that life. But that doesn't mean that what cafes have on their walls or how close the furniture comes to an open brick wall um, is now important to me personally, but that information is important. And of course, the interesting thing is that information can go onto a file card much faster than an idea, way faster. I still feel that, and Victoria says so in her own book, that you want to put something of yourself, which in the case of the fiction writing, that will be where the cafe Edwina visits the night before she leaves for Italy. Because you got to put something on it for why you want that piece of information. But then this indexing style that Victoria does with the sheets of paper instead of having file cards, again, is very, very fast. You can flip to the page that you need super fast, and you don't need to put so much. I've got architecture, 1300, arts, textile, 1600. And you don't need, for information, you don't need a full tagline. Those are what you need for ideas. And so even though I gave credit to it in the book that I've been writing all along, now I'm experiencing why that's valuable. And that's just totally opened my mind to the other side of Zettelkasten world.
Beautiful. What you just said about, that you're talking about categories. This is a card that I made for last week's episode that ended up not having a good place to mention, but I think it's related here. So, taglines versus dead categories.
Mm-hmm.
Dead categories in quotes.
Yeah.
This is just kind of a writing prompt or an imagination prompt. take it from the perspective of the categories that don't view themselves as dead. So in my own Zettelkasten, just taking two different categories, one of which is very alive for me. I only need to say the word, dreams.
Oh.
Because it's a collection of all the dreams that that rose to the level that I want to record this and have it in my Zettelkasten. So just the word dreams, it's not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Something I care about, but which is not there yet, is ontology. So it's right now it's saying, hey, liven me up, so that the word ontology is going to bring forth the same thing that dreams does. So yeah, that's kind of a process of repair, which is not to replace, well, it's whatever it is that makes just the one word come to life in your mind. And it might just be a collection of taglines or something different for each category. But yeah, what you've said is our strong points of view can get melted a little bit as we. Okay, Deb.
Oh, yeah, Deb. I'm thinking that back to that order page in your for your book, Victoria, and that one heading that I referred to. It occurred to me while I was listening to everybody that the N, which I decided was structure, was actually note box.
Oh.
Note box. So you have I mean, it's like the way things connect around the Zettelkasten is just it's mind blowing, really. And it happens on a very, very, very regular basis. You look at things and say, wow, how does that dovetail so nicely? But it does. It does. I mean, I looked at that and I thought, this cannot be a typo. What is this? Because you're too meticulous. It can't be a typo. It has to be there for a reason. Right? And
That's generous.
Huh?
I said, that's generous, my friend.
Maybe it's a happy accident.
We've seen the energy that you put into this project. And it's not a trivial amount of energy at all. Very serious about being able to produce a product that you could be proud of and that would take your readers to the place you wanted them to go. Yeah. And without trauma. Without trauma.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I did have a little piece of trauma myself, by the way, because I was so looking from the first time I heard of it, I was so looking for that chapter on the various types of stories, all from around the world. What was there? Yes, you did it.
You got an IOU.
I didn't do it. It wasn't me. that was the editorial team working in concert to say, this book is going to be 1,000 pages. We got to cut stuff. I'm like, no. But yeah, it's okay. You'll still get it. Don't worry.
I signed up for the newsletter as well. So, this is yeah. No question that was an inevitability right there. But the idea is, rather than having all these things running around in one's head, the Zettelkasten for fiction and all the things that we've been working with, ideas that we've been working with, thoughts that we've had, all come together. And you can, I mean, I could have even me, I can find some stuff.
Yay!
This is revolutionary, almost, you know? And so I'm encouraged by what I see and what I hear from all of you in terms of being able to know that these things that keep popping around in my head, I can grab these guys, cradle it, and make it something. You know, sometimes I feel like, I don't know if you remember the movie where the woman got into some kind of accident and she could not remember. Once she went to sleep, her memory was wiped out.
Yeah.
Right? So she would have to get up in the morning and read her diary, read the log to see where she was in her day or in her life. Right? Sometimes I feel like that. It's like I have this character, and at one point they were dominating my mind. And then the next day or the next week, I don't even remember exactly what their name is. You know, I mean, I have this one Newberg.
Kelly.
What is she doing these days? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the idea is with Zettelkasten for fiction, with the regular Zettelkasten, with minimalist Zettelkasten, all of these things, we can end up with an index that is so granular that we can actually pick out something and focus on that one thing for whatever amount of time that we have. I think that's raison d'etre.
Yeah.
You know, that's what that is. The reason for it being.
Yeah.
And knowing that we can, there's no limit. There's no limit to it. And it applies to fiction as well as it does to nonfiction. It's outstanding. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll just say that the time that I have spent investing in my index, I'm profoundly grateful for.
Mm.
I think of all the things in my Zettelkasten, my index is the thing of which I am most proud because I can do what you were describing. I can find stuff quickly. And I can also find, oh, that's not in there. It surely is not in there because these 3 words that I would have indexed it under, that it's not in there. So either way, it is so helpful to as a self-maintaining system. And build an index. You will not be sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the index is basically the key.
Yeah.
It's the key. You could even call it it's sanity.
Oh.
Yeah.
You
Put that up there
Put it
again.
back.
Let me see.
That is fancy.
Wow.
Why did that not make a sound so it gets big on the screen?
Oh, that's
Okay.
spectacular.
So yes, this is the cover to my index
Oh,
that I created in Canva and got printed and laminated.
yeah.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
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 So Mel.
Yes. So I'd say that the thing that my Zettelkasten has been asking for throughout is to have more paths into the information. So the index is a path. Categories, to the extent they exist, are a path into finding things. I've been playing around with a symbolic subject index as well, which connects books and the Zettelkasten. That's still very experimental, something I can share more fully later. And another new thing is, so I've got these borrower cards for libraries, which would have been just, the date that's due and the person who checked the book out. I've got a whole bunch of these, they're blank. And I had asked on the LiLLiPub, how do I use these? What could I use these for? And there were a lot of great ideas. But what I ended up doing with them is adding them to my bib cards. So I've got the author and title for whatever bib card and the number. And I put down the cards that are made from the main cards that are made for this book, because they're going to be scattered all throughout the Zettelkasten.
Yeah.
So I've just got the card number and the tagline in these places. So now if I remember, I read this book, what cards did I make from it? Or I'm reading this book again, what cards do I not need to make because I already did? Or what's missing even, because I remember reading it and I didn't make a card on it. It's just, there's a lot of different ways to get back into that flow of thought by this edition. So yeah, I just started that a month or so ago. So only a few books have them at this point, but I've also been, as a process of repair, if I'm pulling out stuff for a book and I'm like, oh, okay, I've got this main card and it's from this book, I'll just start one of these bib card directories and add that number and tagline to it. So, I'm not spending time going through and figuring out every one, but as they come up, I'm like, oh, I can add this. So,
Yeah, that's great. There's so many perfectionist, completionist rabbit holes.
Yeah.
That it's a thing to come up with a useful, just as I encounter it, and that's when I'll do it. Yeah. So, I think that what I intend to do, what Nadia would like to have happen, is for the life sciences to have a little more life. Because I'm writing about life, even though there's so much in the book that's about ideas. I want it to take place in a world that you can relate to as a physical place. It's not an intellectual place. So I think that the inaugural items that are in that section of my Zettelkasten are very inspirational to me. It's the cards that I made from Molecules of Emotion, which is very illuminating about how neurochemicals actually interact with our bodies, and it was not known until somebody broke some rules in order to figure it out. And there's a lot of interesting things that came out of that book that are very inspiring to me. And one of the things that I want to start with, when she's talking about this, is by Candace Pert, Molecules of Emotion, and she talks about particular interactions in the system of that she's describing, where you've got delivery of messages, chemical messages to a cell. How do it know who needs this information? How does the sender and the receiver find each other? Vibration.
Oh, wow.
They recognize each other by frequency of vibration, which is distinct among the different types. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
How does that relate to a person's vibe?
Or to language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that it's happening and that we're kind of unaware of it.
Yeah.
But when people say, oh, I can read your aura, maybe you can.
Hmm.
Maybe the fact that I can't read your aura doesn't mean that you can't read mine.
Mhm.
Maybe you are detecting something real
Mhm.
and I'm blind to it. Maybe it's a temporary blindness. Maybe it can be learned. So those are the kinds of things that I'm very interested in. It's like, and in terms of microbiology, obviously it's a huge field, and I'm only going to be able to scratch the surface. But I mean, just what we're learning about the microbiome in our guts and the sorts of therapies that sound disgusting that are actually helpful.
Like olive oil and lemon.
I'm talking fecal transplants, baby.
Yeah.
And having an effect that is astonishing.
Oh.
And that's, getting over our like dislike monster
Mhm.
in order to even
Anthony. Yeah.
get to those sorts of things. If you can imagine centuries from now, there's a whole world that was opened up that are, I don't know, instincts toward um, whatever it is, niceness, might be completely turned on their heads.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I think about um, from that vein is, and so I expect Nadia Z to be able to help me with this. One of the things that I think about. All right, trees produce oxygen,
Mhm.
and they are consuming carbon dioxide. Well, if you think of oxygen as waste, does oxygen smell bad to a tree?
Oh.
Mhm.
Well,
Do those of us who live on oxygen smell
Yeah.
bad to trees?
so I know that that's probably somewhat rhetorical, but tree plants actually they consume oxygen when there's no sunlight.
Yeah.
They consume oxygen and give off carbon dioxide if there's no sunlight for photosynthesis. So they kind of swing both ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Not
And
the
I would
preference.
imagine, yeah. Um, I mean, given that we breathe in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide, we probably smell really good to them.
And also molecules that have odors are very complex, and oxygen is an element, so not likely. Although sulfur is an element and it has a smell, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and the air is we're not living in a pure oxygen.
No.
We're living with all sorts of gases.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean just it's that kind of thinking of the part of it is that thinking about nose blindness
Mhm.
as a thing. Well, we're all kind of in a certain level nose blind all the time.
Yeah, we're getting used to stuff, period.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fascinating one is nitrogen, that we live in this enormously nitrogen-rich environment, but we can't, and we need it, but we can't take it in from the air that we breathe. And most plants can't take it in from the air that surrounds them either. You need a specific group of plants that are capable of taking nitrogen out of the air and putting it into the soil. And how rare they are, and how did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to assign you that part of our story. Well,
And
we've gone
the
quite.
nitrogen,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
nitrogen fixing plants, it's not even the plants necessarily that do it, it's the bacteria that's around their roots
Ah,
that do the job.
Right.
So those plants without their corresponding bacteria, it might be fungus. It's been a while. Um, they actually won't fix nitrogen like
ah.
bean plants. They have to have the specific microorganisms that go along with them in order to do the nitrogen fixing.
Wow. So is it a symbiotic relationship where it takes them both?
Mm.
It's not the microbiomes by themselves that do it, for the combination?
My understanding, and it's been a while since I've read about this, but yeah, it's mutually beneficial because the nitrogen that gets fixed, the plant is able to use.
Yeah.
And I don't remember precisely what the microorganisms get out of the process, but clearly they get something.
Well, what I'm asking is if you have these microorganisms in the soil, is that soil suddenly rich in nitrogen without having a bean plant nearby?
Mm, I think the bean plants are required.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
And that from a gardener Zettelkasten.
We'll have to link to that episode. Yes.
There you go.
We've covered a lot of interesting topics.
We have. All right. Well, where can people join us to participate in this Notecard Nerd-Along and other activities?
Well, you can find us at LiLLiPub.org. Be sure to come by, where we're having marvelous, marvelous discussion of Victoria's book. But Victoria, where can people find your book?
Ooh, I know this one. At victoriacrowder.com. Just pop on over there and you can order your copy. There's, I don't know, there's still a couple hundred left, so there's plenty to go around, but it's launching worldwide on Friday. So if it's something you want to get, you better go get one.
And if you buy her book, she's going to give you a coupon for a 1 month free trial of LiLLiPub. So that's an extra bonus. Cuts the cost of the book almost in half.
Now, if and it's not if, when the pre-order is done, somebody shows up at the site, what happens to them? They'll still get the book, right?
They will. It will be a print-on-demand book, which adds anywhere from 4 to 10 days to the process. It kind of depends on what the backlog is. I will likely do another pre-order more towards the end of the year. I don't think I'll do another one right away. So yeah, it'll just take longer.
Yeah. But people who want it, and you can see how big it is, you might need to make some time in your schedule to read it.
For real.
Yeah, especially if you're going to do it. I've had mine since Thursday and I'm only on page 26.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry,
I would
guys,
just
homework.
like to just a plug a little bit. You mentioned earlier about this book being more academic, but the writing style is anything but.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Victoria is your cool teacher of your favorite class.
Yeah.
Yeah, the writing is conversational. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good.
And
Yeah,
I love
I literally wrote it the way that I teach, so it's not, it has a lot packed into it, which could qualify as academic, but it's written the way that I teach my classes, which is just talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, join us over on LiLLiPub. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, give us some comments, tell us about what you're doing in your Notecard Nerd-Alongs, and subscribe if you are not already subscribed, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.